Good evening, everyone. I am Aruna Kumari, Associate Professor in the Department of Information Technology at Mallareddy College of Engineering and Technology. And I'm delighted to be your host for this evening. It is my privilege to extend a warm welcome to all of you on the third day of the AICT-sponsored 6-day Atal Faculty Development Program on Next-Gen Solutions for Medical Challenges, powered by AI-based intelligence systems, organized by the Department of Information Technology at Mallareddy College of Engineering and Technology. Before we begin today's session, please be aware that attendance is mandatory for each session. Your attendance will be confirmed only if you provide the feedback form. Please also note that the feedback form link will be provided only in the Zoom chat box and will not be provided in any of your WhatsApp group. Participants are required to maintain a minimum attendance of 80% and should secure 60% of the assessment marks to be eligible to get the certificate. Without any further delay, let us start today's session. It gives me immense pleasure to introduce our esteemed speaker for this session, Dr.P.Naga Srinivasu. Dr.P.Naga Srinivasu is an associate professor in the Department of Computer Science at Amrutha School of Computing, Amrutha Viswavidyapeetam, Amaravati, Andhra Pradesh. He holds a postdoctoral fellowship from the Department of Teleinformatics Engineering at the Federal University of Ceará, Brazil, and serves as a research fellow at INTI International University, Malaysia. His doctoral research at Geetham University focused on automatic segmentation methods for volumetric estimation of damaged areas in astrocytoma instances identified from 2D brain MR imaging. He is recognized as a Stanford 2% scientist for 2024 for his outstanding contributions to research. Dr. Srinivasu expertise spans biomedical imaging, soft computing, explainable AI, and healthcare informatics, with a significant impact on academic literature through numerous publications in esteemed peer-reviewed journals and edited book volumes with renowned publishers including Springer, IGI Global, CRC Press, and Bentham Science. Actively contributing to the scholarly community, he is a diligent reviewer for over 100 journals and technical advisory board member for various internationally recognized conferences. Sir has already handled session 3 yesterday, and today's session will be the continuation with article discussion. So dear all, please join me in welcoming Dr. P.Naga Srinivasu. Sir, we welcome you, sir.
Yeah, thank you, ma'am. Thank you for reading out the short bio. Once again, I would like to thank the coordinators and the management of Mallareddy College of Engineering and Technology for inviting me for the session. So I think so there are around 80 participants now, and I could see in the rest of this session there are more number of participants. So in the meantime, we can just wait for the other people to join the session. So let me continue with the discussion that we are having on the previous session. Basically, it is more about something like the applications in the medical domain, where we are going to work with the data pre-processing and what is the significance of data annotations and labeling. And the other one is like what happens if we are going to work with the missing data in the data sets, like if at all, if the standardized data sets or the data sets that we usually use with the medical domain, if at all, if some of the data is missing, so what is the impact of working with such type of data sets? And I had told you very clearly, it is going to have a significant impact on the generalizability of the model. So generalizability in the sense like, so if the model couldn't accurately predict, or if it couldn't accurately assess what is the appropriate class, then we can say it lacks the generalizability capability of the model. So that is what we people had discussed, and today's discussion is on like the intelligent applications in the healthcare domain, as well as with in the perspective of writing a research article. So what I personally feel is like I'll just show you a couple of studies, and then uh, we can have a discussion on writing research articles with respect to the healthcare domain, and then again we can get back to the applications and what is the recent advancement in the healthcare domain, so that it can assist the people, those who are in the earlier stages of the research, in what direction they could move. So let me share the screen. Okay. Someone, could you please confirm if my screen is visible to you?
Yes, sir, it's visible, sir.
Yeah, thank you, ma'am. Thank you for confirming. So maybe I will just discuss now in what way we are expected to write the research articles in the healthcare domain. And I had told to you very clearly in the yesterday's session, like there is something like the data availability. Basically, we are going to do that, or we are going to write that towards the end of the manuscript, like just before the references and after the conclusion part. Now, there are certain fields like the data availability, or else it is something like the conflict of interest or the author's contributions or the funding statement and all. And especially when we are working in the healthcare domain, the data availability statement is very important, in the sense like whether we are using a standardized data set. If we are using, yesterday there is a question in the session as well, do we prefer, or what is your choice? Will you work with a standard data set, or will you be working on a data set that is built from the scratch? So if that is the way, if that is the question, if I was going to use the pre-existing data set, then I was going to just provide the source from where I had acquired the data, so that when we are writing the manuscript, we have to make sure that the content in the manuscript must be reproducible. That is what all the publication houses usually wants from the authors. So like that is the reason why. So when we are writing a proposed model, even we people are supposed to discuss what are the implementation environment, or where we people had implemented it, and what are the libraries we had been using, or what is the programming language we are using, and what are all the hyperparameters we are using. We people need to mention them very clearly, so that if somebody else want to reproduce the same results, they must be able to do that. So basically the data availability statement is more or less, it is going to contribute the same thing. So like we are going to mention what is the data set we are using. If that is not the case, if we are having, or if we are building our own data set, then obviously we have to provide how we people had collected the data. Some people used to write it as a data collection. Data set description is way different from data collection. Data set description is already the data set is available, we are using that, and how many number of instances are there, and how many number of classes are there. Like if the data set is having 10,000 records, we say it is having 10,000 records, out of which 70% we are using them for the training, 10% we are using them for the validation, and 20% we are using for the testing. So testing is different and validation is different. In fact, when we are splitting the data set as 70-30, 70% is meant for the training, and the other 30%, out of that 30%, 10% would be for the validation, which is usually used for fine tuning the model. So, and the other 20% is for testing the model. So whether it is able to predict the outcome properly or not. So we have to define that, and how many classes are there, and how many instances are there in each of the class. See, if there are 10,000 records, how many of those instances belongs to class 0, how many of them belongs to class 1, and how many of them belongs to class 2? Like that we people need to define. And yesterday, if you could recall, I had shown you a PPT towards the end of the at the end of the, sorry, slide towards the end of the PPT, where it clearly shows like what is the maximum value, what is the minimum value with respect to that particular feature, and what is the mean value, what is the standard deviation, and how many how many of the values are in the range of 0 to 10, or how many of the values are in the range of 10 to 20, or something like that. It is going to give the comprehensive view of the data set. that is all about the data set description. And whereas data collection is something like we people have to mention how we people had acquired the data and how we people had segregated the data. Sometimes when we are acquiring the data, if it is having too many missing values, see, when we are asked to sign up or when we are asked to provide some data, we are least bothered about providing the data. Sometimes we are going to give a vague data. So that type of data has to be cleared off, in the sense it has to be discarded from the data set. So obviously we need to do the data segregation, and after that we need to do the data labeling. So everything has to be done from the scratch, if at all, if we are building our own data set. So those things has to be clearly mentioned, if at all, if we are doing that. So that is the reason why writing medical related or healthcare related manuscripts are quite different from the other things. Like if you're writing about computer network, like intrusion detection, or if you're writing about stock prediction, or if you're writing about the recommender system, or if you're writing something about the classification of objects or object recognition or something. So then they, even we do mention the data set and all, but we need not really worry too much about some of the aspects of the manuscript. So we can just ignore them. But whereas in with respect to the healthcare, we people have to be extra careful, because this particular field is quite sensitive. Yesterday, I also had emphasized the same. Basically, some people, they don't wish to disclose their healthcare records. If that is the case, obviously we will call such type of data as a sensitive data. When we are working with the sensitive data, obviously we have to acquire the permissions from the concerned authorities who has provided the data for us. So even that particular information has to be enclosed along with the manuscript, if at all, if we are working in the healthcare domain. So that is what the way it is going to have the significant change in writing a manuscript in medical domain from the other domains. So here, coming back to the actual structure, this is the standard structure we usually follow. So when we are writing the manuscript, so it is something like we are going to have the abstract field, and I'll elaborate what actually is expected in each of them, and followed by the introduction, and followed by the literature review. In some cases, they are going to call it as a related work, but both are same. And after that background, basically this particular field is not being discussed by the majority of the people, and some people, they usually write it as material and methods. That is the other way. And after that, the proposed methodology, so the technique or the algorithm that you're trying to propose, and followed by the results and discussion. So not just the results, it has to be there has to be a discussion as well. So what is your opinion? Why there is a significant change in the performances, or the other state of art techniques, or the other existing techniques? Or else, if you feel uh, if your results are not really that much satisfactory, in the sense, I just want to say something. If there is brain tumor classification, and if somebody else got 99.4 percentage accuracy, and if you're able to get only 89.6 percentage accuracy, which is comparatively less than the other existing models, even that is the case, there is nothing wrong, we can just publish a paper. In the sense, what I was trying to say is like, see, after implementing a model, we had understood that that particular approach is not feasible for medical data, or maybe that is not feasible for working with MRI data. So until unless you do the experimentation, or until unless you do the evaluation, we are not aware that the model is not going to perform well. After evaluation, if you had realized, or if you could understand that that is not a feasible way, then there is nothing wrong, we can publish a paper. So if that is the case, we people also have to do the discussion there. So like, why we couldn't get the accuracy? Maybe just because of data set, or maybe because of class imbalancing, or because of underfitting, or maybe because of overfitting, or what could be the reason why we are not able to get good results, or why we are able to get better results than the existing models. And after that, conclusion and the future scope. So majority of the people, they usually write it as a single paragraph, but it could be two paragraphs. One paragraph is completely towards the conclusion, and the other paragraph could be towards the future scope, and followed by the references and the bibliography. So this is the standard structure that we usually follow for majority of the scientific papers. And more or less, we follow the same mechanism for the medical related or healthcare related papers as well. And here, what fields could be ignored means, frankly speaking, I really don't think any of these fields could be ignored. But I usually say something uh, like majority of the people think if your manuscript is lengthy, then there is a very high possibility of getting the acceptance for the paper. Frankly speaking, the length of your manuscript doesn't have any significant impact, or it really doesn't contribute towards the acceptance. So what usually people do for increasing the length of the paper is like they're going to have 4 or 5 pages of introduction, 4 or 5 pages of literature review, and then after those 8 pages, they are going to write 1 page for proposed model, and or maybe 2 pages for proposed model, and 2 pages for the results and discussion, and 1 page for the conclusion, and 1 page for the references and bibliography. So in the sense, up to this part, they're going to spare around 8 pages, 4 pages for introduction and 4 pages for literature. And for rest of these parts, they are going to spare around 5 pages. So do you really think if I think that this particular significant part could be concluded in 5 pages? If that is the question, see this particular data, writing about the introduction and writing about the literature review, see who are the, basically when we are writing the manuscript, we have to keep in mind who are the audience. Who are the audience means, again, a undergraduate student is going to read our paper, or a postgraduate student is going to read the paper, or else maybe a practitioner, or maybe the professional, or a IT professional, or who is going to read, or a PhD scholar who is going to read our paper. See, this particular paper is not really meant for undergraduate students. So they couldn't really get the basic fundamental knowledge from a research paper. They have to go through the textbooks, or they have to go through the other online repositories where the fundamental information is available. So obviously, if that is the case, you need not really spare 8 pages for these two sections. Rather, these two sections could be concluded in 5 pages, and rest of the things has to be concluded in 8 pages. So in that way, it will maximize the chances of acceptance. But if it is in this way, 8 pages for the introduction and literature, and 5 pages for the rest of the content, like the proposed model and results and discussion, if that is the case, I can blindly say the paper would be desk rejected, or else the reviewers might be rejecting it. See, in frankly speaking, the desk rejection is a very good thing. Rather than waiting for 6 months, or rather than waiting for 8 months, or rather than waiting for 1 year for the reviewer comments, and we are not sure whether they are going to respond back to us positively or not. And after that, maybe after waiting for 1 year, if at all, if the reviewer says that this particular content or maybe this particular manuscript doesn't have a novelty or something, or else if he says that if the proposed model is not adequately discussed, and after 1 year, if they had rejected, you just imagine again, if we are going to resubmit, by the time the work will be outdated. So basically, that is the reason why I recommend these two things could be concluded maximum of 4 pages, and rest of the things could be up to 8 pages. I really don't say 8 pages is a mandatory thing, but I was just correlating what could be the length. That is the reason why, if you recall, the majority of the IEEE transactions, they never accept a manuscript with more than 8 pages. If at all, if we are submitting a manuscript with more than 8 pages, it would be a desk reject. So their submission system is, maybe some cases submission system is not going to accept. In some cases, once after you submit, in next couple of days, the editorial office is going to get back to you, like either to reduce the size of the manuscript, like the length of the manuscript, or else they're going to say, So this particular paper can't be taken forward. So that paper would be rejected. So that is what the other thing. Your number of pages doesn't have any significant impact on the acceptance of the paper. And followed by, so what is that? It is desired in the abstract section. So the majority of the people, they write the abstract in a much simpler way, in the sense they are going to write like the medical classification is very important. It is able to identify X, Y, Z, and then from 2020 to 2022, or maybe 2000 to 2014, there is a drastical increases in the cases of some brain tumors or some heart diseases or something. This is what the statistics that are given by some consortium or something like that. They're going to write that stuff over there, but that is not really required. You just briefly discuss about what particular thing or what is the significance of that particular study. So like there are increasing number of cases in heart diseases. So there is a requirement for some AI assisted technology for identifying the heart diseases in a much earlier stages, or cardiac diseases at a much earlier stages, or something like that. And then you discuss about the methodology, what technique you're using. So in the sense like if you're using YOLO V10 or something, or YOLO V9 or YOLO V8, so you just write what is the methodology you're using, and briefly in a one single statement, you write what is the significance of using YOLO there, or what is the significance of using UNET there, or what is the significance of using MobileNet, or what is the significance of using that proposed technique. If it is a combination of multiple things, then you clearly mention that is in our study, we are evaluating X and Y, a combination of X and Y techniques. See, like what I can say is like a cat boost algorithm with MLP, or maybe something like that. You just mention what are all the things that you're using, and then you go to the next part, that is the results part. So there you people have to clearly mention what is the accuracy that we are obtaining. So my proposed model is able to get 95% of accuracy, and it outperforms the other existing models. That is one way. And other thing is like maybe you can also discuss about what is the sensitivity value, what is the specificity value, or else in some cases, if you want to be more specific, and if your model is really performing well, you can also simply write it as our model is able to perform more at least 10%, or don't give the vague values. You make some calculation, and then you say now it is able to give 7.5% better accuracy than the other existing models. So that particular statistical information has to be provided at the results section. Even if they're using a loss measures like the mean square error, or the mean absolute error or something, you have to make it very clear what is the value that you had obtained with your proposed model, and those values has to be summarized at the results part. So all together they have to be in a single paragraph, and followed by the conclusion. You can just conclude that the proposed model is comparatively better than the other existing models concerning to some XYZ aspects. So you just make it very clear. So if you're going to see, these are the general review comments that they generally ask you. So they might be asking the authors to restructure the abstract with respect to the introduction, methodology, results, and conclusion. In the same way, some people they are going to ask you to rewrite the abstract, focusing on the technical superiority of the proposed model. So this is what the way the people are going to ask you. In either of the cases, you have to discuss the abstract in with respect to this way. So there is an example for you. So either you could completely write this as a one single paragraph. So or else, so you can also just write it something like the introduction. So what actually it is going to do, and the objectives. It could also be a single sentence. And then the methodology, what methodology they are going to use, and then the results part. So what are the values that they had obtained? And finally, what is the conclusion? So either you could divide them as a multiple subfields, or else you can also make that as a single paragraph, and then you can just discuss all the four things. So the introduction, the methodology, the results, and then the conclusion part. And after that, the keywords are other important thing. So basically there is a very significant impact on the keywords. So basically, based on your keywords, your paper would be assigned to the editor. So like so it is something like, once after you submit the manuscript, during the submission process in the dashboard, it is usually going to ask you to give 4 or 5, at least 5 keywords, or at least 3 keywords. And based on the keywords, it is going to match who are all the editors who are working in that particular field, and to them they are going to assign the manuscript. So that is the reason why they usually ask the keywords. And the other important thing is like, when we are searching for a previous study. So like, if I want to say you like, if you want to talk about the federated learning, so we usually like type in the Google search like, use of federated learning with the deep learning models for disease prediction, or disease forecasting, or something. You're going to write it in the Google search. Then obviously your keywords in your manuscript are being used as a buzzwords for identification of the paper. So if you're having a relevant keywords, then obviously your search engine, the Google search engine, is going to always prompt your paper at the first. So that is the reason why your keywords are exceptionally important. So in order to fetch the citations, basically citations are one way to assess that you're really working on a very like you're doing a very good research. So however, it is not the solo evaluation metric to decide the superiority of a particular individual, but still then, so in case if we really want to get more citations, we people have to be extra careful when we are defining our keywords. And usually we are going to use a semicolon for separating the keywords, and there is nothing wrong. You can just give the keywords from 3 to 7 in the range. So you can have minimum of 3 keywords and maximum of 7 keywords. And usually we people follow 5 keywords as a standard procedure. There is nothing wrong. You can just conclude with 3 keywords, but when they are searching the corresponding editor who could handle this manuscript, it could be difficult if you're providing them with a minimal number of keywords. So there is nothing, I'm sorry, there is nothing wrong. You can provide somewhere around 5 to 6 keywords in a manuscript. And it is not a good practice to write the abbreviations in the keywords section. In the sense like, see here as an example. So it is preferably better to write support vector mission rather than writing SVM in the keyword field. So you could just write in a complete way rather than just abbreviating that. So this is all about the keywords, and then followed by the introduction part. So in the introduction part, as I had told to you, so you really need not write many pages of introduction. You just write, so what is the introduction to the field of study, or where you're working on, what is the significance of that. And here you can write the census, or else you can write the statistics. In 2020, there is a $50 billion that are invested on intrusion detection, and in 2025, the investment or the expenditure has raised to 50 millions, and maybe in 2030 it would the investment for intrusion detection might raise to 100 million, or something. Statistics you could provide there, or the census data you could provide there. But the thing is like, whenever if you're doing that, you people have to provide the corresponding reference. The same case in the healthcare domain. See, if a particular type of cancer is growing exponentially, so over the years the number of cases are increasing, either you could represent it like a graph, or else you could also write a paragraph there. But you have to clearly mention, so what is the source of information. If it is a web source as well, there is nothing wrong. You can also just provide the URL of the website, but you have to clearly mention when it was previously accessed. So that is other thing. And when we are getting the graphs, that is a very big mistake that we usually do. The people usually what they think is like, we people can reuse the figures from internet, or we can also reuse the figures from a different work. In the sense, if there is an author X, he has published a paper in with some publisher, and in that work he might had an architecture diagram, or he might had a block diagram, or he might had some this statistics information or something. If that is the case, I really don't recommend. Not I don't recommend. You should not use those figures. There is a very serious concern. Like once when upon publishing the work, or else when we get the acceptance, we usually are supposed to give the copyrights to the corresponding publisher. In the sense, the authors are going to give away the copyrights to the publisher. Like if author A has or author X has published a paper in Elsevier, and they are going to give away the copyrights to the Elsevier. And if author Y wants to use those figures, they have to write to the Elsevier and they have to obtain the permissions to reuse those figures. So usually the publishers are going to demand some money for reusing the work. So in the sense, basically the previous author, they will not ask for the money. Basically, they had given away the copyrights to the Elsevier. Now, when somebody else wants to reuse those figures, they are going to, they have to obtain the permissions from the actual owner. In the sense, from the Elsevier, they have to obtain the permissions. And on obtaining the permissions only, they could reuse. But don't think that, sir, we are citing them. In the sense, in the caption of the figure, we usually write a square parenthesis. Like if, let us assume this is the caption. Here we are going to write from 6 or something. From this particular reference, we had obtained the figure. That is no longer accepted. You have to get the permissions from the actual publisher. If at all, if this work was published, and if the other publisher has realized that these guys are reusing the figures, or without the proper permissions, if they're reusing the figures, then they are going to sue the later publisher, or else they're going to sue the other authors, in the sense those who are reusing them. So maybe it could be in lakhs or it could be in crores as well. It depends upon the publisher and depends upon the seriousness of the work. So that is the reason why majority of the publishers, they really don't allow anybody to reuse the figures. So that is the reason why, if you can see, or else I'll just show you, just a minute. I'll just show you one image. I just stopped the thing. Yes. Just a minute. I'll share my screen. Is my screen visible now? Oh, sorry. I'm just sorry. I'll just share my screen once again. Is this particular window visible for you?
Yes, sir, it's visible.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the confirmation. So this one, this is currently under review. Basically, this paper, I got it for review. There are in this one, if you're going to see carefully, see, are the images in this manuscript including free from apparent manipulation? So either yes or no or not applicable or something we are supposed to give. That is what the case with almost all the publishers. They are going to ask us very clearly whether the figures are really drawn by the authors or not. See, in some cases, if we are confident, we are going to say, yes, they are free from any apparent manipulation. If not, we are going to just write, I am not able to assess this, so that the editorial office is going to make a decision. If at all, if I found, or else the majority of the people, what they usually do is like, if they found that data is like, if any such type of things are mentioned, I think my PPT is now visible for you. So if something like this was written, then they are going to say this data was being apparently manipulated, or they're obtaining it from the different sources. So either the authors could redraw, or else the authors has to obtain the permissions. So usually there are many online tools like draw.io or something where you could draw the figures. So I personally recommend you to draw the figures by yourself rather than copying it from any other online sources. And after that, the motivation of the study has to be discussed, and where you can also emphasize more about the novel aspects of the study. And then you can also discuss something about the contributions as a bullet points, and don't write 7 8 contributions. Maybe 3 4 contributions are sufficient, because again, the reviewers are going to just check whether all the contributions are being attained or not. If you're having a doubt like whether the feature extraction or feature engineering could be considered as a contribution, obviously it could be considered as a contribution. And explainable AI based assessment could be considered as a contribution, means still it could also be considered as a contribution. So you can just mention like your proposed model is one of the contribution, like that you could also mention. And after that, finally, the statistical analysis that you're going to do. Statistical analysis in the sense like you're going to compare your proposed model with the other existing models. So that could also be considered as a contribution. You have to mention those contributions as a bullet points. And after that, the overall organization of the manuscript has to be discussed. This is what the majority of the people really ignore. Like the section 2 discuss about the literature, section 3 discuss about the background of the study, section 4 discuss about the proposed methodology, section 5 discuss about the results and discussion. So those sort of things has to be clearly mentioned about how the manuscript is being organized. And please avoid the contents that you had already discussed in the abstract section. So if something was already discussed in the abstract, you need not really uh, repeat the same thing in the introduction field. So it creates unnecessary ambiguity with the readers. So this is all about what is really needed in the introduction field. I'll just show you a couple of examples. This is one way how we can just write the contributions. These are the contributions of the study. All the images that I was showing here are from previous studies that are being accepted and published. So this is one way. And you could also write in the other way. This is the other way how we could define your contributions. And apart from these contributions, there is other important thing that recently the people had started doing in writing the research papers, adding the research questions and research gaps. So what are all the research gaps that they had identified in the existing studies? So in the sense, what are all the things that existing studies couldn't address, and they're going to identify them as a research gaps. So here there is one example. So where the authors has mentioned research gap 1, research gap 2, research gap 3, so that it gives an impression to the reviewer as if this authors are seriously working on the manuscript. They're able to identify, or they're able to figure out what are all the limitations of the existing studies, so that they're able to work in a much fruitful manner, or else they are able to contribute in a much better way. And research gaps are one way. And you could also, in the same manuscript, this complete slide is from the same manuscript. So in the manuscript, the authors also has discussed about the research questions. So what are all the questions that they come across when they are doing the literature survey? Or what are all the questions that they are trying to answer with respect to the current study? In the sense, by using the proposed methodology, they are able to answer all these 4 questions: research question 1, research question 2, research question 3, and research question 4. And don't write 10 questions as if we are writing a question paper and only answering 2 questions in the rest of the manuscript. It is not entertained. In the sense, what I was trying to say is like, if we are discussing 4 questions here, all the 4 questions has to be addressed in the proposed methodology. And the same thing has to be discussed like research question 1, as we had discussed like pre-trained models to work with federated learning. So after evaluation, we had identified pre-trained models are performing well. And as for the results that are seen in table 2 or table 3, the results with pre-trained models are comparatively better than the other standalone models or something. That is what the way how we people have to clearly mention. And this is other example where the people had written about the research questions. So this is a very recent trend where the researchers had started writing the research gaps and research questions in the introduction part, but these has to be in the introduction part, and this doesn't need any subheading. Don't keep too many subheadings like 1.1, 1.2, 1.3, 1.4. See, we could see plenty of papers. What the authors are going to do is like the BTech people, they are going to uh, write a paper, and then sorry, they are going to write a research thesis. Sorry, the final year project thesis they are going to write. They're going to convert that as a paper, and then they are going to submit. So what happens is like motivation would be having 1.1 as a subsection, and research questions would be 1.2, and then the contributions would be 1.3, and then the organization would be 1.4. It really, frankly speaking, it really irritates the reviewers, in the sense those many subsections are not really needed. Why they are not needed, in the sense these are all things that are desired to be there in the introduction field, and if that is the case, again we need not really write the subheadings. Obviously the reviewers would be extra careful in reading them. And after that, the literature review. So we all are aware of that. I humbly request not to criticize the work of other people, because it unnecessarily creates a lot of mess. In the sense, see, if there is a other X, if he had proposed something and if he got some output, like 99 percentage, and if other Y writes that the technique other X has used is not really good, and how come he can get 99 percentage accuracy? It has to be it should not go beyond 95, but how come he get 99 percentage accuracy? Those sort of unnecessary criticisms or unnecessary things should not be discussed in the literature section. And and the other thing is like the majority of the people will try to build up the citations here. Like I could see pretty good number of people. What they usually do is like all his last couple of years papers, what are all the papers he has published, all those papers will be cited in the literature section. That is not entertained, again, in the sense like they usually don't allow to do the self citations in too much way. In the sense like you can do the self citations up to 1 or 2 relevant studies. It doesn't mean that you could cite up to 10 or 15 of your papers in the literature section. So that is the other thing. And don't go beyond 3 years or 4 years from the existing time. In the sense like I could only discuss about the studies that has happened in the past 3 or 4 years. It should not be like something has happened in 2015 or something has happened in 2012. So it is not the right way, because those works are really outdated, and your proposed model has to be in line with the current trending models, and it has to be superior than the current trending models. It should not be superior than what has happened 5 or 10 years back. So even this particular section is also very important in the medical domain, or in the healthcare domain, because always they try to enhance the precision of the models. And when we are trying to focus more on the precision of the model, we have to work with the models that are uh, recently performing better, and we have to compare and we have to prove that our model is comparatively better than those. And it is also recommended to add a table. So in the table, there's the way how your literature section table could be like what are the approaches and what are the objectives in the where the particular models are being used, and what are the challenges of those approaches. And these data could also be you can also get obtain it from the GPTs or somewhere like Gemini or ChatGPT. So, but don't copy paste it here because they usually falls under the AI content, which unnecessarily creates a lot of mess. But the thing is, like it is strongly recommended to add a table rather than writing 5-6 pages of literature review. Now you can just conclude the literature review on 1 page or 1.5 page, and then you can add this table in a half page. And if you're going to see, this genetic algorithm is being used in 50 and 51 references in those two papers. And fully convolutional residual network is being used in 52. And then the decision tree is used in 53 and 54. And likewise, and here, rather than criticizing their work, you could just write, what are the limitations of genetic algorithm, or what are the limitations of FCRN, or what are the limitations of DT? So that is a better way to highlight what are the limitations. And after this paragraph, if at all, if you feel like we can add more content there, if you want to just focus, increase the length, you could add 1 or 2 paragraphs, like what is not done in the existing studies and how your proposed model is going to address them, as 2 different paragraphs after this table, but nothing beyond 2 pages or 2.5 pages. If it goes 2.5 pages, it obviously doesn't give a good impression on the manuscript. And after that, the background part, the majority of the people ignore this, but this is very, very important. The background part, basically, it is going to discuss about the data set description. So from where you're acquiring, and as I had told you earlier, so how many number of instances are there, how many across how many number of classes they are being distributed, and all that information has to be mentioned. And then if at all, if we are performing any data pre-processing or yesterday data augmentation we are discussing, so what are all those things, what you're performing there could be discussed as a data pre-processing. And it is recommended to have some mathematical modeling, in the sense like people usually say we are using GLCM model, or we are using ANOVA, or we are using lasso regression or something for, or else maybe we are using something like SMART. But the thing is like, we'll be having some standard mathematical equations that are available. It is recommended to write the mathematical equations so that it gives an impression, good impression to the reviewers. And after that, feature engineering. So as we people had discussed yesterday, the feature selection, the initial ranking, and like feature weight assessment and feature weight optimization, they all could be the part of the feature engineering, and that would be the part of the background section. And after that, the details of the hyperparameters and the details of the implementation environment. So for this one, I'll just show you a couple of manuscripts where they are being clearly discussed. I'll just show you. I'll just stop the screen and then I'll show you. I think my screen was visible for you. See here. Here we had discussed about the research questions and the research gaps in the introduction field. So rather, if you want to increase the size, you could add a figure, but this figure is not really needed. We just want to add some, increase the length or so. We had added a figure there. And after that, see here, there are the sections, and these are the contributions. See, contributions are discussed, research questions are discussed, and research gaps are also discussed. And after that, the literature part, there is a small table and usage and year of publication, the technology they are using, and the summary, those things they are being discussed there. And after that, see here, like in the background field, we are discussing like how the models are being updated. It varies from paper to paper. It's a different thing. I was just showing you that. And that the algorithm has to be with a proper indentation. They have to be indented, like the once after you start the input and output, there is a gap that is given for the procedure or for initialization vectors. And after that, the procedure starts here. And for like, there is some indentation is needed. and that gives a very good impression. See, there is a dataset description, which is a part of a background field, and then the implementation environment, and then the proposed methodology. I'm sorry, I'll just show you. See here, this is the details of the implementation environment. So what are the devices we are using, and what is the operating system, and what is the programming language, and what are the libraries we are being using. So this is the information about the implementation environment. And similarly, likewise, there is the details about, I think in this work, they are not mentioned. I'll show you some of the work that gives a very clear idea. Okay. Just a minute. See here, in this given one, the details of the hyperparameters are clearly defined. So like the learning rate, the number of kernels, the number of filters, and the stride, the actuation function, the number of epochs, the dropout factor, and those things. So all these things has to be discussed as a part of your background section. So the details of the hyperparameters that are being used and the details of the implementation environment. Both of them are completely different, and either of them has to be discussed very clearly. And those things are usually discussed a part of a background. Or else if you want to move these two, the hyperparameters and the implementation environment, to the proposed methodology part, there is nothing wrong. You could also move them there. But these two has to be discussed. At the start of the session, I had told to you, we people have to largely focus on the reusability or reproducibility of the work. So if somebody else want to reproduce the work, obviously we people have to discuss where it is being implemented and the details of the hyperparameters. See, as I had told to you just now, somebody might be criticizing like how come he can get 99%, but that particular model could only obtain around 96%. How come it is possible? That could be a question. If that is a thing, before criticizing, we are not aware what programming language they are using, what sophisticated libraries they are using, and what type of GPUs they are using, or how much amount of data they are being using for training, or what type of pre-processing techniques they are able to use so that they are getting 99%. So when we are not aware of those, then obviously we are not supposed to criticize. So however, it's one part of the story, and the other thing is like it is an ideal way we people have to discuss about the hyperparameters as a separate section, and we have to discuss about the implementation environment as a separate section where that particular thing is being implemented, whether it is in a Jupyter notebook, and if it is that is the case, what is the details of your standalone computer. And if that is not the case, even if we are relying on the Google Colabs or somewhere, then obviously we people have to discuss about what is the GPU and how much amount of memory has been procured. Those things are really required to be discussed when we are discussing about the implementation environment. And after that, here there's an example where a dataset description and their corresponding description is added here. And then here there's the details about the implementation environment. So likewise, they are going to provide where that particular thing is being implemented. Likewise, you could also discuss about the feature engineering and all, and that could be the part of the background section. And followed by, there is a proposed methodology. So where this is the crucial thing about the manuscript. So where we are going to discuss about the technical superiority of the model, how or why that particular proposed model is superior over the other existing models, and in what way, and what is the correlation or what is the specificity to work with respect to a particular domain. So those things has to be discussed. And then the architecture diagram is a mandatory thing. We have to show the architecture diagram, and then we have to clearly explain all the components of the architecture diagram. In the sense, if you're going to see this one, this is one of the example where I had found in the internet. So in the same manuscript, the figure 4 shows this is the block diagram, and figure 5 shows this is the architecture diagram. The block diagram is going to outline what are all the things that are being used. So, and basically here, it simply says that there is a classification model that is being used along with the LSTM. And basically, in the subsequent section, when they are discussing more about the self-learning model, or maybe when they are discussing about the CNN model, so they are going to show the architecture. This is the way how the architecture of that particular thing seems to be. Like these are convolution layer, these are pooling layers, and then there is a fully connected layer and the softmax layer. So likewise, this is the architecture diagram, and then this is the block diagram. So where it is going to outline what are all the components that are being used. So at least I recommend at least this particular architecture diagram has to be there, even if the block diagram is not discussed. And if you want to make your manuscript to be more comprehensive, or else if you want to increase the size of your manuscript, so you could also draw multiple diagrams that looks like this. And after that, these are the hyperparameters. Basically, these are learning rate, like training loss, testing loss, training accuracy, testing accuracy. These are used for identifying whether the model is underfitted or overfitted. Even these hyperparameter graphs, and this is the learning rate graph. So these things are usually called as a hyperparameters, and these things also it is recommended, strongly recommended, to show them in the proposed methodology section. So on using this particular model, or on using this particular technique, how well the model is able to learn. So here, frankly speaking, even there is a lot of loss over here. Maybe if we are going to increase to 50 FOs or maybe up to 60 FOs, the loss will keep minimizing, in the sense it has to completely go down. So, but here it is not close to zero. It is somewhere close to 0.1. That is, frankly speaking, it is not really acceptable. And here also the model accuracy is not really that good. So basically, if that is the case, then this particular graph usually shows that the model is overfitted, where the training accuracy is more and validation accuracy is less. So so by showing this, if they are really close enough like this, if these are close enough like this optimally, then we are going to say the model was properly fine-tuned. So the other important thing I want to tell you, if these are the graphs that are there in the manuscript, and for this particular type of graph, what could be the accuracy that we are able to get? Maybe somewhere close to 94% accuracy only will be getting. And what people are going to do in the table that they are going to add towards the end of the results and discussion section is that you're able to get 97%, 98%, or 99.4% accuracy. See this graph clearly, if you're going to observe this one carefully, the values are somewhere at 0.94. Then they don't even go till 0.95. And if the manuscript is showing that they're getting 95%, 96% accuracy, then we can clearly say the output results are fabricated. That is a very blind notation. And that is what we usually check when yesterday I was discussing being an associate editor. Before we send the manuscript to the review, we people have to check whether the results are genuine or not. If that is the case, this is one thing we are going to check. And other thing is like usually we used to have a confusion matrix, which seems to be like this. And if the confusion matrix is having some values like 10, 5, 5, and 10. Now, so or else it is 16. Now let us assume it is 16. Now let us assume there are 100 records or 100 samples in the data set. Just for explanation, I was saying, out of which 70% of them are meant for training, and 10% of them are used for the validation, in the sense for fine-tuning the model by the data. And after that, 20% is meant for testing. So validation is for fine-tuning, and this testing is for evaluating the model. Now, altogether, how many number of instances has to be there in the confusion matrix? I think I was able to, my question is properly conveyed to you all. Am I clear? Fine. I would be grateful if you could at least respond back in the, okay, thank you for the response. So it is something like, I was sorry, I just stopped. Now, if that is the question, how many number of instances means only on adding all these, it should not go beyond 20. And if your confusion matrix is like this, then we can see clearly says that the results are being fabricated. Sir, are you really that particular in cross verifying means? I directly go to the dataset description section and I was going to check how many we are going to clearly mention there are 100 records available, out of which 70 of them are used for training and 10 of them or maybe 30 of them are used for the validation. Then out of which 20%, we obviously know 20% of them will be used for the testing. Then I straight away go to the confusion matrix. Then by seeing the confusion matrix values, if these values are much higher than the values that are being discussed there in the results and in the dataset description part, I can clearly say these particular results are clearly fabricated, or these particular results are with respect to a different thing. So either we are going to figure out the fabricated results with respect to this one, or else we can also simply say here the accuracy of the model is not beyond 94. And if at all, if the others are writing, we are getting 98% or 99% accuracy. There's the other way how we can figure out there is some sort of suspicious thing about the results. So after this, these hyperparameters are going, these are not mandatory, but still then it is going to create a very good impression with the reviewers as well as for the audience. So in the sense, it also shows that you're genuinely doing the work. So identifying the research gaps, clearly mentioning them, identifying the research questions, discussing there in the introduction field, and discussing the hyperparameters or showing the hyperparameters, they obviously creates a very good opinion on the authors. So that these are recommended to be added. And other one is like the architecture details. So what is the size of the kernel and what are the parameters being used and what is the tensor size? So there is nothing wrong. Basically for DenseNet 169, even other A uses the technique or other B or other C, whoever the other uses, obviously more or less these are the same things that will be used with respect to the DenseNet 169. So even these type of things are also recommended to be added in the proposed methodology, maybe after the architecture diagram, but these are not mandatory. So these are commonly available in the internet. So you need not really worry about calculating those values because these are the standard values. So you could get from the internet, or maybe you can get these data from the other previous studies, and you could also present them in your work. So the other thing is like your results and discussion part, as I had already told to you. So here, first thing is like you have to show the superiority of your model. To show the superiority of your model, you have to calculate the model with, or you have to assess the model with respect to the multiple evaluation metrics. And then you have to tabulate the outcome of your proposed model. And apart from that one, you can also do the comparative analysis. So in the sense, comparative analysis in the sense, see here, sorry, there's one table that was missing. Yeah. So this is the example for the comparative analysis. So usually people think, people usually don't write a citation here, but I strongly recommend you to do the citation. In the sense, see, if you doesn't write the citation means it gives an impression in your study. As a part of your study, you are evaluating all these logistic regression, neural network, and random forest, SVM, and finally you're evaluating your proposed model. So, and you're saying your proposed model is better than the other models. So that is what the people might be saying. But the thing is like, if you're going to write 17 here, 61 here, 74 here, and 76 here, then it clearly says that, okay, these values are those authors in those papers has evaluated, and this is what the accuracies they had obtained. And in the current study, this is what the values they are obtaining. So like without fine tuning, it is 95.5, and after fine tuning, it is somewhere around 96.7 or something. So these two are the proposed one. And up to here, the ResNet 101 or Inceptron ResNet V270 from this study, like that, if you're going to write the references, it clearly shows that the author is getting those values from there, and he's comparing with the other existing studies. So when you are adding a comparison table, it is strongly recommended to write the reference from where that it has been acquired. And after that, um, the ablation study. Basically, ablation study is very important with respect to the healthcare domain. So ablation study in the sense, I can just give an example. Some people might be thinking XAI could be used, or else I'll just talk about it. See, the example is here. This is an example without fine tuning and with fine tuning, or else you don't perform feature engineering and you perform the feature engineering. See, this is what it is mentioned. So it can be observed that DMLP model has attained 97% accuracy when utilizing pre-processing techniques, whereas without pre-processing technique, the model has attained 96% accuracy. In the sense, there is 1% difference. So what actually this ablation study is going to say is like, if you really doesn't, or else if there is some component that could be removed from your proposed model, and how well your model is performing without that particular component. In the sense, if how well your model is performing without performing the feature engineering. So that way we people have to assess. So in the sense, what we need to prove is like, we have to say our proposed model is robust enough, even if we doesn't perform the feature engineering. So how we are going to show that means it is a part of ablation study. And this is mandatory thing for the majority of the healthcare related projects. Your model has to be robust enough, even if some part of your model is not being considered. So for medical, I strongly recommend to include this ablation study as well. Moreover, it is going to increase the comprehensibility of the study. It is going to increase the length of your manuscript. It is going to give the good impression on your proposed model. And it also give clear insight whether that model could be used with respect to that particular data or not. So that is all about the ablation study. And after that, finally, the conclusion and future scope. So in conclusion part, we have to highlight the major accomplishments, what was being done, and what are all the contributions that are being addressed with the current study, and then relate the outcome. So what is the outcome you're able to get, and whether it could be used in the real-time scenario or not. See, in the healthcare, we really can't say our automated disease diagnostic model could be replacing the radiologist. We couldn't say that. Rather, we can say the outcome of the current study could be an assistive model for the radiologist in supporting them in the decision process. It is just a supportive way, or it is a supportive mechanism that is going to help the radiologist or the someone or the practitioner in making a decision process. So you have to relate that work in what way it is societally important, and you can also highlight the limitations of your proposed model, and then those limitations that you're discussing here could be discussed as a future scope. So if you had not done a diverse statistical analysis, or maybe if you're done with only with the ReLU is an activation function, and if you're not done with the sigmoid or leaky ReLU or something else, and if you feel that TAN-H could be performing better, or the leaky ReLU is performing better, then what we can do is like, that is what the limitation we had done only with the limited implementation components, or we had only considered the limited initial parameters. And maybe in future, we could further improvise with a lot of statistical analysis with different types of activation functions or regularization models. So that is what the way how we can also convince. And the other thing is like, this is generally they are going to ask whether the references provided are applicable and sufficient, and are the references that are not appropriate to the topic being discussed. In the sense I had told to you just now, basically this is what the way how IEEE Access is going to ask us when we are doing the review. I think majority of you might be aware of that. So what we, as I had told to you, don't cite all your previous works for the past couple of years in your current study. Until unless they are closely relevant, don't include them. That is not the right way. And coming to the references part as well, as I had told to you, not to go beyond 3 or 4 years from the current existing time. So because uh, any work that is prior to 3 years or 4 years back could be considered as a outdated work. So usually people don't really recommend citing or work or discussing those works in the current work. And other one is like, this is the other way how they're going to ask the reviews, like quality of writing, the overall quality of the content, interest to the general audience, and rigor of the work. And likewise they're going to ask. So this is other way how they are going to check with the reviewers. And finally, the others' contribution is very important. So, in what way you and your research supervisor could share the contributions? Not completely everything would be done by the research supervisor, or not completely everything would be done by the scholar. So it is a wise decision if both of you could share the work, like who has done the conceptualization, who has done the data curation, or who has done the formal analysis, or who had done the funding acquisition, or who has done the investigation on the study, who has proposed a methodology, or who has done the project administration, or who has procured the resources, or who has done the supervision, who has done the validation, or who has written the initial draft. So all those things, or who has done the revision, or who has done the coding part, like software, we simply write it as a software. See here, we simply write it as a software. Who has done that? And all those things could be written as a other contributions. But please make sure, especially if you're a research scholar, don't hurt your research supervisors saying that he only submitted the paper and rest of the things are done by me. That is not right way. So anyway, without the supervision, or without the support, or without the insights from the research supervisor, we couldn't write the paper, and it is the responsibility of the research scholars to write the research paper. So, but still then the research supervisors are responsible, or they are going to guide us with respect to these things. So the validation part, the supervision part, or the project administration, or whenever required, they are going to procure the resources for you, and they are the one who are going to investigate the current study. And before going ahead with the study, they are going to do the formal analysis. So your name and your supervisor name could be mentioned there. So that is one best way. And even if you're publishing the paper by yourself, they are going to ask you in the interviews, what is your contribution to the work? Then you have to say, I had done the software coding part, I had written the initial draft, and I had done the conceptualization. Or you have to make it very clear. Nowadays, the institutions, they are asking, what is your contribution in the paper? And I will say you one thing, a funny thing that has happened in my case. Uh, they had asked me, what is your contribution to this paper? And I had told them like, I wrote the initial draft, and I had done the conceptualization, or had done the data curation. That is what I had told to them. So I really don't remember what I had told to them, but they had asked me the question and I had told them. And then immediately they had opened the paper in the internet. They had gone down towards the end of the paper, and then they had cross-checked whether what I was saying is in line with the things that are discussed there in the paper. In the sense, the people are very stringent towards the other contributions. Whether we are contributing, or our friends, they like us and they're keeping our names in the paper, really matters here. That is what they want to check. So this is all about the other contributions and it has to be discussed. So with this, I will just stop it here. And other thing is like basically, as per the recommendation, today I was supposed to talk more about some intelligent applications that are used in working with your healthcare domain. So I will just show you one work on XAI technology. Maybe see the research scholars, those who are in third year or in fourth year, usually what the research supervisor is going to do is like, I'm not talking about all the research supervisors. Even I was a research supervisor. So maybe 1% or hardly 2%, in the sense, maybe 1 out of 100 or 2 out of 100. The supervisors, what they usually do is like, after we write 4 research articles, they will be asking us to write one more research article by addressing one more objective. Now, if that is the question, it is something like there is nothing wrong. Maybe if at all, if your research supervisor might felt that the work could be further improvised, or else in some cases, the research supervisor might sense that maybe he might be able to get more critics from the people. If that is the case, then the research supervisor is going to ask you to further improvise the work. If that is the case, you could you could just make use of this XCI. I'll just open that and I'll show you. There is one work on XCI. Just a minute. I will just stop this in next 1 or 2 minutes, and then we can have the questionnaire session. Just a minute. Just a minute. Sorry. Why was not able to share the screen? Yeah. So here is the one study on breast cancer analysis. This is my work. And here also, if you could see, the work is with respect to the XAI, explainable AI. So I really don't say XAI is completely a novel thing, but rather, as I was saying to you, if your research supervisor towards the end of your fourth year, again, if they're asking you to work on a new topic, then I personally recommend you to choose this XAI. For your kind information, XAI will never enhance the performance of the model. It never improves the quality, or sorry, the accuracy of your model or the precision of your model. It is only meant for analyzing or understanding how actually the model is working. That's it. It doesn't do anything other than that. So maybe that could be it. It is something like, already if you got 99.2% accuracy, that is best. And if you feel that it couldn't be further improvised, then what you can say is like, don't argue with your supervisor, sir, it can't be increased. I had done the best and I was the superior in the field or something. It's not like that. Rather, what you can do is like, you could analyze what are all the features that had contributed for obtaining 98% or 96% of accuracy. See here, in the literature section, we are writing about the existing fields, like, sorry, existing approaches and their accuracies. And these particular ANN, artificial neural network, logistic regression, decision tree, their specificity values are not discussed in those papers. So we are writing it as a not available. And even we people have to clearly mention what does that not availability is all about. So what does it mean? And uh, see here, in this one, here is about the implementation environment. And here, see, this is what there are two ways. One is sharp and other one is a line. And the one that you people are seeing here is sharp based analysis. Here we are showing, so how this particular feature and this particular feature, there is a feature here and there is a feature here. How they both of them are interdependent on each other, whether they are both are dependent or independent, or how they are going to contribute in the decision process. So we are going to analyze that. See here, the accuracies, earlier I had shown you a graph, and see this one. The accuracy of this one is very close to 1. In the sense, in this case, if the accuracy is 99 percentage or so, it is acceptable. And this shows that what is the significance of each of the feature in making the decision process. So likewise, we can further enhance the comprehensibility of the study, or else we can just show like how well the model is going to work. But no way the XAI models are not going to increase the accuracy of the model. They are just meant for analyzing uh, uh, like what is the contributions, or what are the features that are significant, and in what way they are being contributing. That's it. But they really doesn't improvise the performance. So the and why I was discussing about XAI now, I was not discussing about anything means basically yesterday we are discussing something about biased, and somebody criticizes your model might be biased. We don't know what actually is happening, but every time your model is showing that correctly it is working, we suspect the model could be biased, in the sense the model is trying to do some sort of manipulations. That could be the reason why it is getting 99 percentage accuracy or 99.5 percentage accuracy. If that is the case, if you're going to show this is what the feature engineering we had done, these are all the features that are being identified, and this is what the contribution of each of the feature, and these are all the features that are meant for making a decision. If you could show them very clearly, then the people are going to agree that you had, or your proposed model is genuinely working. I think so XAI is exceptionally good to work in, or to work in the healthcare domain. We could use the XAI in the healthcare domain. That is what I want to say. Fine, I will just stop it here. And there is 4 minutes time. I'm sorry. If you're having any questions, I was more than happy to answer. I'll just see if somebody is asking any question. Oh, okay. Somebody has mentioned it is like intelligent applications in decision disease detection. I totally agree, but the thing is, like, I personally feel uh, it is something like, uh, in the sense, like, everyone will have their own way of working in the aspect. If I say, I can just say you one example. The future thing will be like the image fusioning. Two different image modalities could be combined together, in the sense the CT scan and MRI could be combined together to make a precise detection. Frankly speaking, that is what the upcoming thing. And the other one is like when we doesn't have an adequate data set, then nowadays what people are doing is like they're generating the images using GAN models, and then they are using those images for training the model. And that is the other advancement. And it is something like it is largely dependent on you and your supervisor to make a decision, or maybe based on the feasibility, or based on the project you are involved in. If you're applying for a project, then based on those projects, it is going to uh, it was going to assist you, or you're going to make the decision based on those things. So uh, however the subject is with respect to the intelligent applications, I had largely emphasized more on writing the research articles with respect to the healthcare domain. um, Explainable AI, yes, explainable AI could be good enough to work with both images as well as with the text-based data. So it could, like, if at all, if you feel like only I'm having 4 contributions in my PhD, I want a one more contribution, there is nothing wrong. You can also include XAI, and we can say like we are trying to analyze the model, or we are making the analysis, feature analysis, in a more comprehensible way by making use of Lime and Sharp based analysis. So That is the reason why we are using explainable AI. And it could be used with any type of data set, not specific to a particular disease. And identifying original publisher from a clone journal means the one best way is like you open the Scopus database and then you search with the ISSN number, and obviously it is going to show. And when we click on, there is a link for a home page, and when we click on the homepage button, obviously it is going to redirect us to the original website. So that is one best way. That is, and the other simple thing I can openly say is like, usually if it is a Scopus index, even if it is in a Q4 or even if it is in Q3, usually they don't really message you, or they really don't send you an email asking for a submission. Obviously they will be having a plenty of submissions, and they really don't run after the people for the papers. So if they're running after the people, means we can simply say that that could be a clone general. And where we can, if the review papers are really good enough, there is a journal in Springer where it is like artificial intelligence reviews. But if the review has to be deep enough, then that is one of the most renowned journal where we can just submit, and if the work is really good, and we can easily get the acceptance of that. Fine. I think there is another session now at 7:30. I once again thank the coordinators and Aruna madam for giving me this opportunity. And if at all, if we are having any doubts, you can just write to Dr. Suresh sir, and I'll be in touch with Suresh sir, and I can just get back to you through him. Thank you all. Have a nice day.
We are truly grateful to you, sir, for gracing this occasion with your presence and enriching our understanding with your professional knowledge. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, ma'am.